Back in 2018, I was working at home on a paper I needed to finish for work and was trying to get it done so I could enjoy my weekend without having to worry about it. It was probably somewhere around 10 at this point, but I'd been working in my office for a good 3 hours. This was after a full day already too, so I was getting pretty exhausted. I kept finding myself getting distracted or losing focus, so I paused what I was doing and stood up to stretch my legs and try to wake myself up. I paced around the room a bit, but as I passed by the wall opposite of my desk, I noticed something move in the window. I stopped and did a double take, looking out the window again. I was on the second story of my house, but the window has a view of the front portion of the property by the garage and porch. At first, I didn't see anything and thought my mind was playing tricks on me, but then I saw a bit of movement again. It was a shadow hovering over the sidewalk leading up to the porch. Someone was standing outside the front door, or at least that's what it looked like from the shadow. After looking out the window for a couple minutes and seeing the shadow barely move, I left my office and went downstairs. I leaned on the front door and looked out the peephole. There was a man, looking about 40 years old and bald, with a scruffy gray beard. I watched for a moment. He never knocked or rang the doorbell or made any noise at all. He just stood there. What started freaking me out more was that I didn't know how long he'd been there for, since I was working and never noticed him until just a couple minutes ago. Wanting some answers to why the man was here, I opened the door. Immediately, I was taken aback because the man didn't even flinch. His face stayed the same, being cold and lacking emotion. "What are you doing here?" I said in a stern tone. The man continued to look at me, but didn't answer. Then his eyes moved past me and looked down the hallway in my home. I moved the door further in toward my body to hide the view. "I don't know why you're here, but you need to leave," I said, closing the door firmly. His strange behavior was both creepy and aggravating. Him ignoring me and just standing there made me really frustrated. But then I heard his footsteps begin walking off the porch and away from the house. I sighed in relief and checked to be sure he'd gone away, then went back up to my office. Trying to forget about the man and focus back on my work, I continued where I left off. About 5 minutes later, and just as I was beginning to really start working, a sudden knock echoed through the house. It was from the front door, but the knocks were loud, like someone banging on the door with their whole fist. Irritated, I got up and quickly ran down to the front door, swinging it open aggressively with the intent to yell at the man. But when I saw him, I quickly changed my mind. Something about the look in his eyes and the way he was standing instantly shifted my anger into fear. I looked down at his hands, seeing him holding something to his side, like he was trying to conceal it from me. All I could make out was the top of a small handle, resembling that of a knife. I looked back up at him, only to see his whole body jolt toward me. I jumped back and slammed the door shut, then fought to lock it, as the man was trying to turn the handle from the other side. Once I got the handle and the bolt lock latched, the man started banging on the door again for several seconds before running away. I stood there with barely any breath in me, feeling my adrenaline still surging through my body. Shakily, I went to the office and called 911. The man was never seen after that, and no real answers to what happened that night were ever found. When I was a kid, between the ages of 14 to 16, me and my friends were really into hanging out anywhere other than our houses. Most of the time, we would go to some fast food place and chill there, or just find some spot in the woods near the park. I guess we were at that age where we wanted to be alone and not have people looking over our shoulders all the time. The only problem with this was that on the weekends, when we'd be out late, most stores and dining areas closed before we were ready to call it a night. During winter break one year, we ran into this problem a lot. We'd go to the parks to hang out, only to find that even in the late hours of the night, there would be multiple other groups that had the same idea. Then one night, my friend JT brought up his parents' old farmhouse, saying it could be a cool spot to explore and that nobody else would be there. He'd mentioned it a few times before this, but we never thought much of it until that night. JT drove me and my other friend, Paul, out into what looked like the middle of nowhere, arriving at a wooden fence. The fence was closed off with a chain, since it was a private property, and JT didn't have the key to it, so we parked and hopped over it. From the edge of the wooden fence though, the first thing I realized was that I couldn't see the farmhouse. Yeah, it was dark out and there were no lights anywhere, but I couldn't even make out the shape of the house in any direction. JT started walking, leading the way on a rough gravel path, as he explained why his parents even had the place to begin with. He said it was his grandparents' farmhouse, but when they died, they passed it down to his parents. Apparently it was in horrible condition, and his parents didn't know what to do with it, so they just kept it. That was almost 10 years ago. Nobody had done any maintenance, or even checked up on it, in over a decade. We walked down this path, following JT for a good 10 minutes, before we could finally see the house. Even from just the outline of it in the dark, you could tell it was in bad shape. Part of the roof was dipping inward like it was about to collapse, and some of the siding panels were hanging from the wood. All of us were quiet now, just looking at it as we walked closer. When we got up to the front of the house, the door was covered by a large sheet of wood, so we went around to the back, where the door was completely missing. We each turned on our phone flashlights and stepped inside. Surprisingly, the place wasn't really trashed like we thought it'd be. Most of the furniture and stuff didn't seem to have been moved very much. It was extremely dusty though, and our phone lights were not the best, so maybe it just looked better than it was. We split up after a minute, just walking around the first floor and looking. I entered a hallway on the left side of the house and began walking down, when suddenly someone walked past the end of the hallway. I froze, and out of panic, I called out JT, as if it was maybe him, but I already knew it wasn't. The man I saw, although it was dark, was much taller and thinner than either of my friends. I stepped back and started to go where I'd last seen the two of them. When I turned around the corner and held up my light, both JT and Paul were standing in the middle of the room, looking away from me. I stepped into the room and looked where their lights were pointing. At the edge of the light, the man was standing and staring right back at them. It was like they were all frozen in fear, unsure of what to make of the situation. "Guys, let's just leave," I said shakily, but trying to act calm so the guy didn't do anything. But that must have triggered everyone's reactions, because suddenly, we were all sprinting to the back door and running out into the open field. I can't even say for sure if the man chased us out, but JT says he was confident he heard footsteps right behind him. We pretty much ran straight back to the car and drove off, not taking any more risks. I think we can all assume that the man was just a squatter or homeless person defending the place he calls home, but without a good look at him, it's hard to say for sure. JT said he'd tell his parents about it so they could lock down the farmhouse, but he never went through with it because he was worried about getting in trouble for going there. Whatever happened that night remains the most horrifying experience I've had, and if JT was right and the man was trying to chase us, then we got really lucky to have all gotten out unharmed. This was last year, I think sometime in April. It was raining pretty much every day here, but this night was a lot heavier than usual, with scattered thunderstorms throughout the day. I was at work for most of the afternoon, but got back home around 8. As I was driving down my neighborhood road though, it was very clear that something had happened. All the lights were out in every single home. I pulled into my driveway and parked, and of course when I entered and tried to turn on the lights, it didn't work. The power was completely out, and my whole house was basically pitch black. I tossed my stuff by the doorway, then went down to the electrical box, just to see if for some reason that worked, but it didn't. This really sucked, because I didn't have hardly any spare lights aside from my phone. What I ended up doing was getting my laptop and setting it up on the coffee table in my living room. The white screen from the YouTube page that I had open lit up most of the room, so I sat back and just watched some videos. I had to work early the next day, but I didn't feel comfortable going to bed with the power out, so I was already planning on staying up late. I probably sat there for a good 2 hours, watching YouTube and checking my phone for any updates on the weather. The lightning was shaking the whole house, so it was pretty bad out there. But randomly in the night, a thump came from outside the window. I jumped a little, then turned my laptop screen to light up that side of the room. I got up and walked over, then twisted open the blinds. I froze up for a second, not expecting to see a man standing right on the other side of the window. His drenched hair was falling over his face, and he was peering through the window at me. He yelled something, but I honestly couldn't hear him with the heavy rain and thunder in the background. Being so caught off guard though, I didn't know what to do. I was a little freaked out though, so I just closed the blinds. I felt kind of horrible about it, but why was he outside banging on my window anyway? I heard him hit the window a few more times, then it went quiet. I figured he'd either given up or moved on to another house, so I turned my laptop toward me again and continued watching YouTube. The storm stayed strong through the whole night. I must have been up for another hour, but my eyes got really heavy and I just couldn't hold out any longer. I lay down on the couch and drifted off to sleep. I woke up to a loud crash. I didn't know if it was a nearby lightning strike or what, but I immediately got up from the couch. The power was still out, and the whole house was still pitch black. I turned my phone on and looked around, and that's when I heard something from the back of the house. My heart was pounding as I walked into the other room. When I shined my light down the house toward the back room, there were several large shards of glass on the ground reflecting the light back at me. I could then see the nearest window completely shattered, with rain pouring into the house and the blinds blowing frantically in the wind. And just a couple feet from there, I could see a shoulder sticking out from behind the wall. My whole body jerked when I saw them, and I instantly spun around and went for the front door. I ran through the rain, getting soaked all the way through, until I got to my neighbor's house. I stood under their overhang on the porch and called 911. It's no surprise that the man wasn't there when police showed up. Although not getting a full look at him inside my house, I was 100% sure it was the same guy from earlier, so I gave them that description. Oddly enough, or maybe not so much, there were 2 more reported break-in attempts that night, as well as several other reports of strange behavior outside people's homes. I was the only one unfortunate enough to have had them successfully break inside, but nobody knows what he was trying to do, and it seems like we won't ever know. Since then, he's never been sighted in or around our neighborhood.
This story happened to me on a Saturday night. It happened when I was with my girlfriend, who we'll call Lisa for the sake of the story. I was sitting on my bed watching TV while Lisa was on her laptop working on a school report for her English class. It was due the following Monday, which kept her busy on the laptop for the majority of the weekend. My parents were out of town, so we had the house to ourselves. I'd just like to point out that Lisa and I were polar opposites from each other. I say this because she was a goth who fantasized over dark and morbid kind of things. I was the complete opposite from that. However, our different personalities didn't stop us from pursuing a relationship with one another, as we'd been together for about 4 months now. I'd also like to point out that Lisa was extremely socially awkward if she was talking to anyone other than myself. There was a time where I invited her over to a family dinner with my parents. Lisa was understandably a bit shy at first, but as the night progressed, it turned out to be less awkward than I anticipated. Near the end of dinner, my dad asked Lisa, "So Lisa, if you could have anything in the world other than Jack, what would it be?"
I don't know if I feel comfortable answering that.
"What do you mean? What else would you want other than my son?"
Harold, stop it! Sweetie, you can tell us only if you want.
I could tell Lisa was getting uncomfortable about the impromptu interrogation my parents decided to have by the look on her face.
Well, it's complicated.
To be honest, I was a little taken back by that statement, as I thought I knew everything about her. I decided to chime in saying, what do you mean, Lisa?" Things took a total 180 when Lisa says,
Don't you guys wish you could resurrect your dead loved ones?
Sure, I guess I would. My family found Lisa quite bizarre since that day, but oddly enough, accepted her for who she was. Fast forward to now, and that statement that Lisa made would all make sense to me. Lisa was tired of the monotony of her report, so we decided to head to the balcony. I remember both of us being out of our minds while gazing out into the horizon. Midway through, Lisa offhandedly makes an odd remark saying,
It would be pretty cool if I could see Todd again.
Todd was Lisa's ex. I found this quite strange that she would say such a thing, considering the fact that we were both dating each other. I assumed she was out of her mind, but sadly that didn't stop me from giving her a piece of my mind. I agitatedly said,
Fine, go see him then. It's not like I ever liked you.
Lisa then gives me a death stare like she wanted to throw me off the balcony. I stare back at her while I casually take another. A long pause of awkward silence occurred, but then I had a nostalgic moment. I remembered Lisa mentioning something about Todd passing away just before we dated. His cause of death was due to undisclosed reasons I won't get into. Everything Lisa was saying all made sense now. She was just expressing that she wanted to see Todd again since he was no longer here with us. I attributed my lack of memory to being in my mind, which helped make the mishap more plausible, so I extend my arm to pass the to Lisa. She then slaps the out of my hand and aggressively says,
He was better than you anyway.
I had gotten into arguments with Lisa in the past, but I could tell she was at her boiling point this time. She then storms out of my place and immediately gets into her car. Despite being wrong in the situation, I stupidly shouted from the balcony saying,
Fine, have fun fishing on Tinder, loser!
She then flips me the bird and begins driving off into the distance. I eventually head back to my bedroom and continue to watch TV. About 5 minutes later, I couldn't help but feel guilty about what I did. I then decide to text Lisa saying, Please come back to my house. I'm not trying to fight. I also have a free place in in case you forgot. A couple minutes go by and I get no reply. That's when I start becoming more anxious. I kept contemplating whether I should call Lisa, but I didn't want to submit to the fact that I was begging for her forgiveness. I continued watching television. That's when I noticed Lisa's laptop sitting on my computer desk. She had stormed off and obviously forgot to take it with her. I noticed that Lisa had left her school report still open on a Word document, so I decided to proofread it, thinking it would be my silly way of apologizing to her. The report was titled, Be with your loved ones, even when they're dead. This wasn't that surprising, as I knew the kind of person Lisa was, but it was also disturbing due to the circumstances that had just occurred on the balcony. I skimmed through the report and find Lisa talking about a relationship and how she wasn't internally happy and needed some sort of closure. I became more and more anxious the further I read into the report. She goes into detail about her past relationship with Todd and how she misses him tremendously. As I skim through more of the report, I come across a part where Lisa talks about being able to reconnect with Todd through a satanic blog she found online. To summarize what she said, it basically insinuated that you would have to go to the last spot where the person died and die the same way. That way you'll be able to reconnect with them in the afterlife. I begin panicking and call Lisa's cell phone. She then picks up the phone and says,
What do you want?
In a voice full of disdain and hatred. I try to pretend like I knew nothing about the report and say, Please come back. I'm sorry about everything that happened. I'm sorry about what I said.
There's no coming back from this, Jack.
That's when I hear the sound of a train honking from a distance. My heart dropped and I yelled,
Lisa, where the hell are you?
Where I should have been all along.
I could hear the train getting louder and louder, like it was coming with a full head of steam towards her direction. I began shouting,
Lisa, get the hell out of there! Lisa, please, I'm sorry!
desperately trying to stop her from what I knew she was about to do.
Lisa, I'm sorry, okay? Get the hell out of there! Please!
Oh, Lisa, please, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Lisa, please, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please come back. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I was such an awful boyfriend. I'm sorry, Lisa. She then said,
See you again, Todd.
No! No, Lisa!
Oh, Lisa, please, I'm sorry.